This is the Dallas Prospect Live with DDP. Every legend was once a prospect. The Dallas Prospect is funded by viewers like you through Patreon and PayPal. To support the show, visit patreon.com/the Dallas Prospect or become a member by clicking the join button. Now let the show begin.
What is up, everybody? This is Darreck Kirby of the Dallas Prospect, and we are doing, another live stream here. We are going to be talking about the Mavericks moving back into that 5 seed slot for now. Now, it's not a done deal. You still got to win a couple games to really lock it down and secure it. But thanks to Portland falling last night in Phoenix, 118-117, they find themselves in a very favorable position here. With 2 wins, you clinch it, or if there's a Portland loss, then you only need the 1 win. But no matter what, you're essentially safe at this point. It's been a bumpy road. This team has been all kinds of up and down, losing games they had no business losing, and winning games that you'd like to see, especially if you can't beat the lesser teams. It's good to know that you are capable of playing up to those teams in that next caliber. So it's really anybody's guess what the Mavericks are going to look like come postseason. A big part of that is health. We have to see in tonight's game how does KP look? Does he look like he's good to go and capable of continuing to build on his impressive return? Now, I said this last stream, he had missed, 7 consecutive games and 10 of 11 prior to Wednesday's game. And he looked good. Less than 25 minutes of action, 19 points, 50% shooting from the field. Pretty much all things you want to see from him. But the question is, can he keep going with that? It's going to be a minute before the Mavericks have to play. Like, if they get through these next couple of days, or rather games, it's going to be a minute before they have to play again, because the play-in tournament's basically going to take most of next week. It'll be the following weekend when they play. So there will be a little bit of rest, and the Mavericks need to focus on capitalizing on that at Phoenix. There you go. Now my alignment's not, well, it's still broken, but it's not as broken. Peeling back the curtain. There you go. Perfect. Beautiful. So the Mavericks in this situation, they now have games against Toronto, and their season finale is against the Timberwolves. Neither team has anything to play for. In fact, it behooves them to lose, because that increases the odds of them getting a better draft pick. But again, we've seen this Mavericks team be up and down and lose to teams they have no business losing to. So it's really anybody's guess. I would assume, given their state of play over the last month or so especially, they're going to be good. Like, those Sacramento games were weird aberrations that nobody wanted to see, and they got trounced by Memphis in the second half a couple games ago, but they've rebounded nicely, so we'll see what they're able to do at this point. I think overall the team is finding a good rhythm, and if they can actually carry that over, then they could be a difficult matchup for somebody. I think they would match up best with the Nuggets, as I've said, but there are people who, for some reason, think that the Clippers are not as good as last year. I actually think the Clippers are better than last year, even though their coach is different, their roster makeup is a little different. I want to see what they're able to do, what the Clippers, I should say, are able to do in the postseason, but I'm not especially eager to face off with them. So with a win tonight, the Mavericks would clinch no worse than the 6th seed. If they win both of them, then they get a 5 seed. That would put the Lakers, because the Lakers, I believe, don't have the tiebreaker head-to-head against the Blazers, but maybe I have that confused there. I think the Lakers are locked pretty much at that point, almost certainly into that 7 seed play-in scenario, which that'll be interesting. Let's see here. First in the house, we had Big Play Slay. What's good? Trevor Foster, what's up? Rangers King, Cowboys X Factor. We got an East Side appearance. 1 win to secure the 6th at worst, 2 to get the 5 seed, says Quasimodo. That is correct. Funky Frog Studios, what's good? Let's see. Phoenix Suns beating the Portland Trailblazers really helped out the Mavericks. Yes, it did. It had a ripple effect through all of the Western Conference playoff standings and really changed things up there. So in that regard, let me see. The 3 to 4 seed race is now Clippers, Denver. Clippers are a full game up on Denver. Denver does own the tiebreaker, however, and Denver plays at Detroit and at Portland, whereas the Clippers play at Houston and at OKC. So the Clippers have, I think the Clippers have it at this point. The fact that the Clippers are in a situation playing 2 teams that are, I think the Rockets and Thunder are both tied for like the best, like in the top 3 odds at getting the number 1 pick. Like they're both really low in the standings, and it's tank mentality, and I understand that. OKC post All-Star break has been excruciating. The few times I've checked in with some of my friends that follow that team, like they're not Maverick fans, they're Thunder fans. I've checked in with them, and they're like, "Ooh, it's been a while since we've had to sit through a season like this, but as long as the team's able to rebuild with this embarrassment of riches they have in draft picks, then maybe it'll be worth it." Let's see. What made me... Oh, no, that's a conversation in the chat. Raptors will not play their starters. We should be able to get it done tonight, says Trevor Foster. Yeah, the Raptors are an interesting situation there, too. First time in 8 years they have failed to make the playoffs. So, like I said, they've got nothing to really play for at this point. Mavericks do play up or down to their competition. That is true. Let's talk progressive basketball, says the Kings games showed what Dallas really is. I don't think that's indicative, really. I think that, as we've said, they can beat anybody, but they can also be beaten by anybody. Now, if you want to say it points to their inconsistency and how they, to some degree, lack a little bit of a mental fortitude needed, I could grant you that. But I don't think that you can say, like, that's the epitome of what this team is, because we've seen how they've done against teams over 500 records this year, and we've seen especially how they've done post All-Star break. Their net rating is the highest in the league post All-Star break. So it's been a great turnaround for the team, and that's great. It's just that whole thing, and this is one of those things where I think because of the health and safety protocols earlier in the year, I'm worried that to some extent the Mavericks front office is going to look at this and say, especially if they get the 5, we got the 5 seed, and if not for 18 games where we just got completely messed up at the start of the season, this could have been a top 4 seed, and then we feel different about the team. I think they probably are going to have that mentality to some degree, and it's not entirely wrong. That said, I still think there are glaring issues that this roster needs to address, and this is way too critical of an offseason to mess around with that mindset of, we like our guys. We don't need to change much of anything. We'll worry about the guys we have to re-sign. Tim Hardaway Jr., they'll probably, I think they'll bring him back. I don't know what that deal will look like, but I think they're going to bring him back. Rangers King, if you're in here, correct me if I'm wrong. Is Brunson, being a second-round pick, is he only a 4-year deal on his rookie contract? If so, you could be dealing with an extension for him sooner than I initially had expected. But there's complications there. I see in the chat people are talking about trying to pry away John Collins. I would love to have John Collins on this roster, but there's always a risk, and the Mavericks have been burned by this risk in the past, of trying to pry a guy away that's a restricted free agent. Now, ever since the DeAndre Jordan thing, the time frame has shortened. It used to be a full week where it could only be a verbal agreement and you couldn't actually sign anything, and so your money was kind of spoken for and tied up. And in the case of the DeAndre Jordan thing, because he welched in the 12th hour and went back to the Clippers at the time, it basically killed an entire week of trying to get to plan B. So all of the premier free agents Dallas could have pivoted to, whether you're talking big fish or just quality additions, second and third best guys on a team, all of those dropped off in that time. And so now they've shortened it because of that catastrophe and how publicized it was. They've shortened it down to, I believe, 3 days now, but it's still a situation where 72 hours is an eternity in free agency. Guys move quickly. And, there's a reason why a lot of times, although it wasn't this way last offseason, a lot of times it's like you hit that 12:01 when it opens up and you got like a slew of news coming in and big deals that have already been agreed to behind the scenes but can now be publicized. It just kind of leads to this crazy flow of information in that regard. And so if you're going for John Collins, you got to hope that you really got to think that Atlanta's not going to match. Because one, you're going to have to overpay. Two, your money's going to be tied up and you're not going to have the flexibility to go after some of these other other options that you might want or need. I keep speaking about my want for DeMar DeRozan on the Mavericks. You could lose a guy like that trying to get it and then still have Atlanta match, and you're SOL. Atlanta earlier in the season, I don't know where it stands currently, but earlier in the season, it was suggested by Atlanta that they did not think that Collins was worth a max contract. They're like, hey, we like you, but I don't know about a max. That we might have to walk away if that's what you're insisting on. But to me, given the time in which those talks were happening, I think that's just posturing. I think that's just trying to play hardball a little bit. But we'll see. It definitely changes things up a little bit. I want Collins, but there's such a risk reward factor in there that's more narrow than I would like. If you get him, it's a huge addition, but you could always miss out. Let's see. Rangers King says, from his understanding, the view is that Atlanta will match. And that's kind of what I thought would happen. Like I said, I felt like it was posturing earlier in the season when they said they didn't think he was worth it and that they would have to consider walking away. But we'll see. Let's see. He says, Rangers King says, what we want is for the Mavs and Clippers to win out so the Mavericks meet up against the Nuggets. The Nuggets win against Portland will definitely help too. Yeah, and I need someone to chime in what the tiebreaker situation is between LA, the Lakers, and Portland in this case. I don't recall. I've been more concerned with how the Mavericks tiebreaker situation was with those two teams. Portland's been ahead, so I feel like Portland has the tiebreaker against the Lakers in that regard. So that helps, and that means Portland's going to be gunning for that win, but we'll have to see what shakes out there. How am I feeling about KP next season, asks Mad Camper. Man, it's going to be a critical season for him. I mean, he's 2 years at this point, basically 2 full years into his max contract, and the questions have remained. His health is very inconsistent. You see when he's out there and he's right physically and mentally, he is an absolute weapon. He is a weapon few teams have any kind of answer for. The problem is availability. And it's hard to have a guy be your true number 2 option and a guy that you consider a franchise cornerstone, right? Like Mark Cuban likened Luka and KP to Dirk and Nash, and he said he should have never split those two up when he did, and he will not make this mistake with Luka and KP. That's what he was talking about at the introductory press conference when the initial trade with the Knicks happened. The problem is that KP has not been available and has not been able to live up to it. What up, Kevin Gray? We'll have to get you back on here soon, by the way. I was actually just thinking about messaging you the other day again. But you don't know how that's going to work out in the long term, because if you don't have KP's availability, the positive, I guess you could say to that, is that while you don't like having that much money tied up in a guy that's going to miss half the season, and he's missed something like 24, 25 games this year, part of that's by design, part of it's not. But when you're in a situation like that, that's not ideal for roster building, obviously, but because the team has had to play so much without him, it has created a situation wherein the team is comfortable playing without him. I truly believe to some extent when he went down in the playoff series against the Clippers last year, I think there was a little bit of, and they responded well, but I do think there was an initial like, oh, like the whole team just kind of like, it was deflating because it was like, man, he's been balling out of his mind. We're already backs against the wall underdogs, and now we just lost a critical weapon. And they responded well. They were able to grit out, 2 wins in the series, but I think it was absolutely deflating in that situation. This year, because they've had to play so much without him and because they've got wins against quality opponents without him, I think it's kind of the opposite in that situation. I feel like they look at it and they say, yeah, all right, we've been here. Like, would we like to have him? Absolutely. Would we like to have him dialed in? Absolutely. But we have guys up and down this roster who are comfortable in the enhanced role that they will have to fill while he's out, right? Like, we have guys who have developed in-house and who have turned into really quality players on very, very good contracts. You just have to figure out what you're able to do with that. So KP next year, if he can actually turn in a healthy season, and that's a relative term, I understand, but if he can turn in a generally healthy season and avoid a catastrophe as far as injury, knock on wood, then I think he'll be all right and Dallas will try to stay the course. If it's anything like this year in terms of his health, then I think after year 3, Dallas looks to jettison. If not earlier, you never know what's going to happen this offseason. Something could come along where they have a chance to, basically issue a get-out-of-jail-free card. We saw with the trading not once but twice of Russell Westbrook's contract, even though he's obviously just made awesome NBA history recently with the most career triple-doubles. That contract got traded not once but twice when it was considered an albatross, something that was untradeable. John Wall off an Achilles in his obscene contract, granted, for Russell Westbrook, got traded. Like, there is no such thing as a truly untradeable contract. You can move on from some of these deals. So if after year 3, you're still having these concerns and questions about KP's health, Dallas might have to move on at that point because financially, I think it becomes too much of an albatross around their neck for what they can build, and they're going to be dealing with, at that point, Luka's max contract. So we'll see. Rangers King says Brunson's contract does expire next year, and because of the way his contract is structured, a non-guarantee, he is an unrestricted free agent. Oh, sweet. I think he's likely to come back, but that is a very good point on the structure of his contract. I forgot his contract was set up that way. They liked him so much, despite being a second-round pick, they structured his contract in a very favorable way for him. Let's see. Fifth seed is mandatory, says Ali Jazz. Clippers are too high for Mavs, as KP will again be on injury. That is their feeling on that. Let's see. Talk of Kemba Walker. Man, I know Boston's down on him, but I think Kemba is dangerously close to washed. I wouldn't go that route. Let's see. Kevin Gray would love to. Just let me know. Absolutely, man. I'll hit you up in the next couple days, and we'll schedule something for early next week when we got some time. Unless it's a 3-way tie division, the tiebreakers, says Rangers King. Well, there you go. A rare situation where the division winners and losers actually matters. And hey, look at that. It's the first time in over 10 years the Mavericks won the division. Amazing. They didn't even do that in the title year. Let's see. Montreal Garrett, I'm so excited about us playing in the playoffs this season. I think the world is about to see something great out of the Mavs. I mean, they got a chance. This is a much better team than last year's Mavericks team. Whether it's just the continued growth and development of guys like Dorian Finney-Smith and Maxi Kleber, or it's the roster composition in general. It's just better. Last playoffs, the bubble was a very, you didn't have Dwight Powell, who's been playing great the last month. You didn't have Brunson because he was out with the rotator cuff. Willie Cauley-Stein opted out. You lost KP very early on in the playoffs. Like, you look at the end of that playoff series, what the Mavericks roster looked like, and compare it to what is just available right now at your disposal, it's night and day. Even though you had some of these guys under contract, you just didn't have them available. So this is a much better, as it stands right now, roster for the Mavericks than last year's team. So maybe. DDP says, Eastside Herald, I don't know. I don't know what I was saying when he's making this sarcastic comment, so I'm just going to move on along. Let's see. Baller Boy, what's good? I really doubt KP gets traded in what will hopefully be his first full offseason without an injury that keeps him rehabbing for months. That is a true comment in that regard. I get what you're saying, but one, we got to get to that point. We're not there yet. And two, I don't think it's likely he gets dealt this summer. I just think that it is at least somewhere in the cards depending on how things go, because I do think the Mavericks understand there is need for desperation here. They need to make something big happen this summer. And because of that, I think they're going to be a little bit more wheel and deal than we've seen in the past 2-3 years, whatever, regarding free agency. Instead of just saying, like, we're going to try and go out and get this big fish or something to that effect, I think they're going to say, no, we'll still see what's going on here, but we also have, then if that doesn't work, then we got this, and this. I think they're going to have a much more direct approach rather than just kind of saying, as they've done before, right? Like, look at when Kevin Durant went to Golden State, the Mavericks had done nothing. They looked like they had nothing coming their way. And then Durant goes to Golden State, and they go, Harrison Barnes, bro, what's up? Dude, get over here, man. Get over here. Here's a max contract. Get over here. Like, they recovered in that way. They had a tendency to sit back on their heels and go into scramble mode after the initial frenzy ran through. And I don't think they have the luxury of that this year, but I do think they probably understand that. And so I think you're going to see a more aggressive Mavericks front office this summer. If the Mavericks don't hit it in free agency, I'll be shocked if they potentially... I wouldn't be shocked if they potentially extend Dodo this summer. I think they should. I think Dorian Finney-Smith is an obscenely underpaid player at this point. His development the last 2 years alone, his leaps forward as a three-point shooter, especially this year in the last couple months, his confidence in shooting threes is through the roof, to the point where we know the Wizards game when he hits the game winner, but man, oh man, just his growth and everything has been incredible to see. And he and Maxey are about the 1 and 2 punch best true indications of when people would say, oh, who's Rick Carlisle really developed? And don't tell me Luka, because he developed elsewhere. You would hear that as early as last year, or as recently as last year. And it's like, dude, look at what Dorian Finney-Smith and Maxey have done. Their growth in three-point shooting and defense and things like that has been incredible the past couple of years. So, yeah, it can't be understated. You have two guys who, there's a reason playoff contending teams have been calling the Mavericks about those guys in the last couple of years. Now, the Mavericks obviously aren't looking to move either of them. But the fact that you had Dorian on like a 4 for 16, I don't remember Maxey's contract off the top of my head, but I know it's another stupid, cheap contract. And, people lost their minds over Dwight Powell's new deal. I get that. But at the same time, now that he's looking like pre-Achilles, at least right now, pre-Achilles Dwight Powell, it's at least more tenable. It's at least more tolerable. He brings a lot of grittiness and hustle plays that are very valuable to the team. It's just a matter of, can he live up to... At this point, the hate feels like it extends beyond reason. It feels like it's more just like, I've been conditioned to dislike this player, and so I'm going to continue to be negative about mistakes he makes or things of that nature. So, regardless, the point was more about Dorian and Maxi Kleber for sure. And I think Dorian does deserve a new contract. What do I think of a KP, Richardson, Burke trade for Brogdon and Turner? Well, Richardson's a free agent at this point, so it'd have to be some sort of sign-in trade in that regard. Burke, man, you got Burke. He on a 3-year deal. He was like 3 for 9 I think, is what value he had. Burke doesn't really have the place on the roster at this point. He's had spot duty that's been very good for us, but it's not a permanent weapon you would want. Obviously, Brogdon would be great. Miles Turner, he's got kind of his own health issues, but not to the extent of KP. I don't think that would happen, but if it was something on the table, I certainly take a look at it. Chris Paul, I think Chris Paul is a free agent, yes. Let's see. Nate Carroll, what's good? Member Nate Carroll. Daniel Ayers, what's up? Fire Rick trade KP day seems so long ago now. Yeah, it's been a minute, thankfully, and I don't miss those days at all. I really don't. And to be clear, I've been critical of Rick Carlisle at times this season because I've seen too many of these head scratchers and frustrating moments build up. Like even games I was covering earlier this year, there was just baffling decisions being made in crunch time, whether it was management of timeouts available or it was plays drawn up in a situation where you wind up in a 40-foot one-legged fall away from Luka as time expires. And it's just like, there's no way that's the best thing you got drawn up. Like that's supposed to be a Carlisle specialty, is plays coming out of timeouts. He's supposed to be very good at getting his team quality looks. And yeah, there's been times where it's been head scratching, but I think overall you've been seeing a better effort on that front for sure. He's got a better feel for the pulse of his team, I think, right now. Donnie Nelson, not a top GM. This roster showed that Donnie likes to take the wrong and long route to get to the finish line. We want another big this offseason. 2017, Donnie should have drafted Bam. I don't think Donnie Nelson's... I think he's a mixed bag as a GM. I think there's definitely situations in which he has looked at, especially with like the European products and all that, Dirk and Luka being the big examples. But I think he's made some good, shrewd moves, especially if you look at what the Mavericks... I can't think of a whole lot of recent examples. Monte Ellis comes to mind. But these kind of fallen angels, as the Mavericks call them, which are the kind of undesirables, the guys who people believe are either over the hill or they're just attitude problems and like, oh, do you really want to acquire them? And then they come to Dallas and they kind of resurrect their career a little bit, or they raise their value. Vince Carter was another one of these guys. I think at the time he was coming out of Phoenix, and that was right after the title, literally that offseason when they blew up the title team. They brought in Vince Carter. And to me, that was kind of a groaner of a move. That was like, oh, why? But Vince Carter was a very comparable, or a very competent weapon for this team, and had the last great stretch of his career really here in Dallas. And then he started kind of bouncing around on one-year deals. So it is what it is. But yeah, I think that Dallas has a mixed bag in that regard. Donnie Nelson particularly. But to your point, yes, draft analysis has been very questionable for a while. Donnie shares a lot of blame in that, and so does Mark, because there's been times where they've treated the draft as literally just PR moves. Like, we're going to draft this super tall guy from India who looks like he can barely move up and down the court because we want to branch into the Indian market. What are you doing? It's not the time for a bit. It's not the time to do this. You're trying to build a competent roster. There's been a lot of their tenure, Mark's tenure and Donnie's, where the draft just was such an afterthought, such a non-starter of a discussion. And that's a shame, because I feel like they've lost a lot of opportunities to make a better team, maybe win a championship. Obviously, people know about the skipping over Giannis because they wanted to keep a max salary slot open, thinking they were going to get like Dwight Howard or something. And it's just like, dude... You talk about a franchise-altering blunder there. Now, to be fair, if you got Giannis, you're not going to then be in position to have Luka when you got him. But still, that there's those kind of moves for sure. But there's also been times where they've hit on it when a lot of teams didn't. They were the one team in the top 4, you could at least say, of the draft in 2018 that understood Luka as like the guy in that draft. Phoenix didn't get it, even though they should have. They literally hired his coach before that season. His Real Madrid coach. They didn't get it. Sacramento didn't get it because Vlade Divac had basically a feud of sorts, like a dislike for Luka's dad, even though Luka's not close with his dad, from what I understand. Bizarre to slight the talent in favor of what was the kid at Duke's name? That should tell you kind of how Marvin Bagley. There you go. For Marvin Bagley. And then Atlanta wanted Trae Young. They were convinced they wanted Trae Young. They wanted to try and build Golden State 2.0. They had brought over an executive from Golden State, and they wanted Trae to be their Steph. And so they decided they were going to be willing to trade down with Dallas to get Trae, who is what they preferred anyway, who they preferred anyway. So Dallas was the one team in that regard, in at least the top 4 or 5. I know Dallas was picking 5th before, that understood that. And for that, deserves some credit. Had an argument with someone that said Donnie and Co. weren't one of the best in basketball. I mean, I kind of just said I don't know that I don't think I would put them as one of the best. I think they're middle of the pack, but they have great hits, but they also have some very bad misses. Do you think if we lose in the first round, they will fire Rick? No. Again, I think they're going to look at the excuse of the first 18 games and say, look, we were a 5 seed, and look at where we ended up. If you take out those 18 games and health, it's not such a weird season where things are a little bit more condensed, then maybe this team doesn't have those same issues. Maybe you don't miss KP as many games as you do. Maybe you don't, maybe you get a better season out of Josh Richardson, et cetera, et cetera. And with that being the case, I think they can easily convince themselves, talk themselves into the notion of largely running it, not running it back, but trying not to throw out the baby with the bathwater, trying not to just completely blow up half the roster or something to bring in new parts. I think they're looking, even if they are aggressive, I think they're looking at bringing in 1 or 2 sizable pieces and then like a nice role player. And by nice role player, I mean something that's like a not very energy or needle moving option, like Willie Cauley-Stein when he came to Dallas. And that was a buyout market, I believe. When he came to Dallas, that was not a real needle moving move. It was kind of just like, oh, okay, well, cool. He certainly brought some value, but it's not a guy that you're like, this is an integral part of our team moving forward. Can we get Lowry? I'd have to see what Toronto's looking to do, but Toronto might be looking to go that route for sure. Hopefully Dwight can help us in the playoffs. He does have some experience from 2016, his rookie year. Whew, that puts it in perspective there when Dwight Powell's playoff experience, you have to go back 5 years. I think he'll help, though. I think he was sorely missed last year. How will we keep Luka in Dallas after his rookie contract expires? Do you believe we have enough quality players on the roster? I think, and I've said this recently before, I don't think there's a likelihood that Luka doesn't sign a new contract with Dallas. In fact, I would say it's less than 1% that he does not sign a new contract with Dallas. The question is how long you can keep him for. Because in today's NBA, you don't have the 21 years of loyalty like you got out of Dirk. You just don't. The closest you have for that is like Damian Lillard, Steph Curry, and Steph, it's easy because they won 4 titles and went to like 6 NBA finals or some obscene garbage. So it's like, yeah, it's not a question, right? Or they won 3 titles out of 5, something like that. It's not hard to be loyal when your team's doing that. People are like, oh, he's loyal. Look what he's suffering through right now. Like, dude, if I had 3 championships, period, let alone that recently in my background, yeah, I think I'm content. I think I can deal with 2 or 3 years of my team just being garbage. And oh, look, in this year being garbage, we'll still be in the play-in tournament. Imagine that. Like, it's not a fair comparison to like loyalty of like Dirk or even like a Damian Lillard. It should be credited there. So I think Luka signs the deal, but you have guys like Anthony Davis signed a deal with the Pelicans, and then like a year, maybe year and a half into a 5-year max contract, demanded a trade, and within a year had forced him to finally move him. That happens. Like, you have to consider those sort of elements. Guys are going to move on, and it comes down to how quickly and how consistently you can build a championship caliber roster around them. And as OKC found out with Durant, eventually it doesn't matter if you're one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the league year after year after year after year. If you can never quite get over the hump, in Durant's case, he's not afraid to go run to the team that literally he choked against. But, you know, you have guys like that who are just like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to where I can win. I'm not gonna keep trying to drag this broken wagon across the finish line. I'm just gonna go jump in the sports car over there and get there like that and not have to stress anymore. I put in enough work over 9 years. That's the mentality. I'm not saying that's Luka's mentality. I'm just saying, like, I imagine it's basically a certainty. He will sign a new deal, but whether or not he finishes that deal in Dallas is up to the front office, and I think a lot of it is crucial to this next offseason. Hopefully that gives you a good answer. My thoughts on Tim Hardaway Jr. and his contract. Hopefully we'll see him play like he has recently, but carry that into the playoffs. That would be... I think that would be a great indicator for sure. I mean, he was in the playoffs last year, if memory serves. I'd have to go back and look at how he did individually, but they're going to need a lot out of him if they're going to do it. Now, he's been on a hot streak lately, but we know how he works. He's hot and cold, and if he's cold, unfortunately, he will keep that hairpin trigger for his shot, and he'll shoot you out of as many, if not more, games than he'll shoot you into at times. Thankfully, he's usually a guy that doesn't just get hot for like 3 or 4 games. He's a guy that will get hot and then carry it over for an extended period, which could allow Dallas to really, make a real push at winning its first playoff series since the 2011 NBA Finals. Bobby Rosca, how do you feel about John Collins? Do I think the Mavericks can get him? I was talking about that a little bit earlier. I think it's a very risky move. I want them to get him. I think he would be a great addition to this roster. But odds are, because he's a restricted free agent, Atlanta will match. And because that also ties up your money verbally for 3 days and you can't really negotiate with other free agents, I think you run way too high of a risk of losing out on other premium talents that you need to secure. So my gut says they'll talk with him, but it's probably not going to be anything you really see anything happen with. I don't think he ends up here. Let's see. Phoenix Suns did not get it because they listened to Stephen A. Smith saying draft DeAndre Ayton. I do not care about Luka Doncic. Oh, you're saying Cowboys X Factor is saying that's why he thinks Phoenix didn't take him. I think Phoenix just they were so enamored with what they had seen from DeAndre Ayton, even before the process, that even though they hired Luka's Real Madrid coach, I think they were just locked in of like, this is what we want. This is what we're gonna go get. Like, this is the one you bank on, and that was not the one that they should have banked on. Now, granted, DeAndre Ayton's been very strong for them, and I know people compare like, oh, his head-to-head record against Luka has been, easily in his favor. Phoenix has been a thorn in Dallas' side even before they got great this year. But it's funny to me the notion that DeAndre Ayton's outplaying Luka in these matchups, because usually Ayton's a solid contributor and Luka's, carrying the team, being the superstar of his team. It's hard to say DeAndre Ayton's outplaying Luka when he's the third star on that team, and I don't even know that I use the word star. I think he's a very nice player and he's got a nice versatile skill set, but no one's putting him ahead of Booker or CP3. So, yeah. Let's see. My thoughts on Tim Hardaway's contract, asks Colton. I think they're going to re-sign him. I want to see what they offer. That's an interesting situation that I just need to... I know that the cap obviously was impacted for this next year based on COVID and everything like that. It's down a little bit, but I think it rebounds strong because of new, unless I'm insane, like new broadcasting deals that were reached. So you can structure it in a way that's favorable there. I imagine they're going to keep him because they like the fit. And I think especially with Josh Richardson not panning out like they hoped he would, I think that makes it where it's like, well, we thought we were potentially upgrading there and that didn't work out. Now Richardson's probably gone. And, I think they're okay with that. But, we know Hardaway works out here and is largely a pretty good, pretty comparable third option. So maybe stick with what you know and, see if something comes along that you can put another guy next to him to kind of fill that 3 and 3A role like Richardson was supposed to do, then great. But let's stick with what we have and what we know works. Let's see. Bobby Roscoe thinks 100% KP is out after this season. The question is for what? I don't think that's 100% by any means. I think there's a chance, but I think it's a narrow chance because if he's out, as you say, then you're taking back a bag of peanuts for him, and I don't think they're willing to give up on that. If he finishes the season healthy, to Ranger King's point, it'll mean the first time that he's in 3 years or whatever, 4 years, I guess if you include the year he missed, that he's not spending the entire offseason rehabbing from an injury. And that's pretty big when you can actually go out there and just play, work on your game. You're not having to physically rehab your body to recover from a surgery and a major injury. So I think he's going to get one more year and a shot, and they'll see if after 3, because after 3 years, when you're down to 2 years left, it gets easier to move on. I think teams are able and willing to swallow a bad contract if it's 2 years. They're not going to love it, but I think they're willing to do it. And obviously, if you get down to 1 year and it's still in this boat, then yeah, they're going to move on and someone will take them, no doubt. But yeah, Dallas doesn't want a bag of peanuts in return for KP. And these aren't magic beans. This is not Jack and the Beanstalk. Odds are whatever they get for KP is just going to be literal beans used and stepped on. Just terrible. So you might as well keep him and hope that he can find a way to stay healthy and play up to that all-NBA level that he's capable of. Would you want the Mavericks to take a run at Lonzo Ball? Lonzo Ball, that would be a very interesting addition. I've started to come around on that. Before I was pretty anti Lonzo Ball in Dallas, in that speculation. I would be interested. I don't know. I need to take a closer look at his game, but I've seen with his growth and progression, particularly his three-point shooting, I think that could be a better fit. And with the kind of circus surrounding his family and stuff, it hasn't been as bad since he got out of LA, it seems like. So maybe that wouldn't even be a headache in that regard, like I was not looking forward to. So I think that could be a quality addition if you can get that done. When am I going to have phone lines? I have plans to do that. It's one of those things where operating this all just kind of on my own on the fly, it's hard to manage that with a live stream because you can't really call screen effectively. And so I'm trying to figure out how to set up a system where I can do that better. Even though I know, Eastside, that you're just wanting to try and jump on and troll verbally. Guys, if you haven't already, hit a like on this video. If you're new here, consider subscribing. Also, other great content we ran last night, the interview with the Sports Fury, talking a little bit about the origin of their channel, kind of their journey through YouTube and stuff on the way to 126,000 subscribers. Sean and Josh, awesome dudes. Really cool interview last night that we had. Appreciate all of you who tuned in. as well. Let's see. If KP gets injured again, is it time for us to trade him? If so, what's his value? He's a bag of peanuts right now, value-wise, because you can't bank on it and because he has so many years left on his deal. If he gets injured again, you're not even getting a bag of beans. You're just getting beans. They won't even wrap them for you. That's how bad it's going to be. So, I don't know. I don't think they move on from KP because of that. Unless they can swing some other kind of big deal where a team is basically getting some other substantial part, and I don't know what that part looks like, but where they're also getting KP, and he's like the kicker that makes the deal work, where that team thinks like, all right, well, we're getting this other thing that we really want most, but we're also getting KP, and if he can live up to what he couldn't do in Dallas because of his health, then holy crap, this is a great deal for us. I don't think that happens. Luka is eligible for a 5-year, $198 million contract. Will definitely sign it this summer. He's in year 3. It's a 5-year deal, so I think it's next summer when he can sign that early. So I don't think it's happening this summer. Do you think Richardson accepts his player option, seeing as how he already declined his player option, so he's a free agent, unrestricted free agent this summer. That's already done, Daniel. What is the chance that none of the first 4 teams will go through? You're talking about like in the playoffs that the 1, 2, 3, and 4 seed get eliminated in the first round? Like the odds that all 4 of those happen? That's got to be like astronomically low. The odds that one of the first 4 seeds doesn't advance, I think that's more reasonable because the West is the West. And it is a situation where I think the NBA is doing a bit of a bubble again, a bubble type system. To protect the integrity of the playoffs where you're not going to have to worry about health and safety protocols deciding a series. But, with that being the case, anybody can beat anybody on a given night. There's a couple teams that maybe are just above it and can take care of business 80-90% of the time, but you really do have a log jam. I know in the standings it looks like that log jam is 5 through 10, but you really do have a log jam in general. I think that extends as high as the 4 seed, maybe you could argue the 3 seed down. But yeah, the teams at the very top have separated themselves, I'd say, fairly comfortably. It just boils down to health at that point, and if someone gets stupid hot. Are we getting Brunson back? I strongly imagine so. I think the Mavericks want to keep Brunson around, and I think he gets enough of a role, and I think this team's locker room culture is very, very strong, underrated in its strength, in fact. And I think he is very, very likely to stick around. What that deal looks like, I don't know. Isaiah McIntosh, what's good? What are your top 5 players in the NBA right now? 5-1. And which player surprised you the most in the NBA this year? Christian Wood has probably surprised me most. I know Eastside will take joy in that statement. He's been so good for Houston. I think he's very underrated. As far as I would say regarding the top 5 players, I hate ranking because like I always just go like off the top of my head where I can throw out 5 names and be comfortable with that, but it's almost like if I'm going to try and break it down and rank it, I got to really think through a lot of it, and there's so many nuances that you inevitably forget that it just kind of muddies it a little bit, and you're like, I put out that top 5, but I can talk myself out of that order a little bit within minutes of it, where I'm like, no, I actually should have had this guy higher. I would say Luka's right on the outside of that top 5, though, and I know that's a little bit of a I know there are some people that already want to put him there. I think, and this kind of shows the hypocrisy of my statement. He's been in the top 5 MVP voting the past 2 years, and I think he's in the top 5, obviously, as he should be this year. But I think in a bigger scope, you have guys that aren't in the MVP discussion that you would say are better, like LeBron, fully healthy, better. Anthony Davis, fully healthy, I think better. Steph, the way he's playing, it's impossible, I think, in many respects to. I'm not doing a direct head-to-head with Luka. I'm just saying it's impossible to put really any point guard or anyone who plays point guard over Steph right now with how he's playing, I think. The one I don't get is people putting Damian Lillard above Luka. You'll still see sometimes. I don't get that one. Damian's a great player. I don't understand how they look at it and say, well, look at Portland's record and look at Dallas's record. It's comparable. Like, it's literally a tiebreaker scenario here. Currently, Dallas is the 5. But it's just like, I remember at the All-Star break, people were up in arms that Luka got the fan vote for starter and over Damian Lillard. And people were like, this is a travesty. And it wasn't a travesty, dude. They're literally, look how the two teams have been separated all year since then. It was exactly what it should have been. It's stupid anyway. Who cares about all-star starter? Like, I know that's like a whole fan vote thing, but they both got the minutes. It didn't matter. It's stupid. But yeah, it gets the conversation gets muddy. I think Jokic is phenomenal this year. Embiid's had a very strong year as well, but I don't put him in the top 5 like overall in the scope of this year. He's been one of the 5 best for sure. But yeah, there's all kinds of nuances to it where you can split it, just like. You can get in debates about like a franchise's greatest player versus the best player. Are they one and the same? I say no. Other people would say yes. There's all kinds of different ways you can interpret and view these different things that makes those kind of conversations difficult. And it's usually why I try not to dive too deep into them, because it feels like no matter what, you can twist the argument one way or the other to either support your argument or tear down someone else's. What are your thoughts on Dallas signing multiple 3 guys and not multiple? Okay, what you're saying multiple 3? You mean like small forwards in that regard, or just multiple like 3 guys instead of one giant contract? I've said before I'm in favor of doing multiple guys instead of the one big fish. If you add like a DeRozan and another quality guy that's going to make a big impact, I think then multiple stones thrown into a lake can make bigger waves than one giant stone. Obviously, that's to a point. If I throw a boulder into a lake, it's probably going to make a bigger splash than if I throw 10 little baby stones. But even still, I think that you can greatly improve your team if you go that route where you say, hey, here is 2 or 3 moves, smaller contracts individually, but also makes it easier to have roster flexibility as a result. And now we're addressing this weakness and that weakness, and even maybe a little bit on this front, as opposed to like, here's this really good player, but he kind of plays into what we were already lacking a little bit of from KP, perhaps. And these 2 or 3 issues over here, we still really have. But now maybe we at least have a little bit of KP insurance. Like, that doesn't appeal to me in quite the same way. It would still be a good move, and it would kind of work against that narrative of, hey, big name free agents don't want to come to Dallas, for instance. It would counteract that, but I think you make your roster better with several key moves. And that's really where I want to see Dallas show that their approach has changed and that they have improved. I don't want to just see, hey, we finally got the big fish, reel them in after 10 years of promising them. Like, that's not what I want. It wouldn't be a horrible thing by any means. Like I said, changing that narrative is at this point pretty important. But I think it's more important to show, like, no, we understand the nuance of this, and we understand we have multiple holes in the boat, so to speak, and we need to plug them with several smart, savvy moves. While everyone else is looking at, the big distraction over here, we're over here actually making the very smart, direct moves that make our roster better and make us championship caliber. That 2011 team, that was not, Dirk was the only all-star on that team. That roster was just compiled of parts that fit together very well, and you had the emotional core and heart of it in Tyson that brought the whole thing together and changed that identity. That was not a splash move getting Tyson Chandler. That was the Eric Dampier expiring contract that you flipped in that regard to Charlotte. Like, that was the move that put it over the top. So if you can be smart and savvy in that way, I think you can build a better roster than if you just try and go get the big guy that you can go get. Today's NBA, maybe you can still win the other way too, obviously, having enough star power. And if you got 2 or all 3 of your guys dialed in and playing out of their minds, maybe. But I want to see a front office that says we are cognizant of our weaknesses and we're directly addressing them with smart, savvy moves that don't necessarily have to break the bank, but still make us much better. What is your grade on the rookies this year? And was passing on Saddiq Bey a mistake? Bey has been great in Detroit, man. I wish Dallas had taken him. But that said, I have a very high opinion of what I think Josh Green can bring to this team in the future. I think he has an opportunity to be a quality player for us. And yeah, the rookies are good. Just Rick doesn't play rookies, you know. I think Tyrell Terry has a very, very bright future as well. I want to see what Tyrell Terry can bring to this team. We don't know the details of why he was away from the team for so long. He's finally spoken, kind of broken his silence, not in that he told us what happened. Given the times we're living in, it's probably not a good thing. It's probably a tragic thing, in fact. But he did crop back up to say that he'll be back with the team soon and he's, ready to be back. Like, that's good. That's good. Like, I think he's got a very bright future in Dallas, and I think him and Green will play a big part in this team moving forward the next few years. And Hinton, he's quality as well. But Saddiq Bey, yes, he's been fantastic and would have been so nice to have on this team. If he had been here, would he have had the year that he had in Detroit? I don't know. Maybe, because this team at one point, especially in that 18-game stretch, did desperately need three-point shooting. But Rick doesn't really play rookies. It's not really his thing. So, I don't know. LeBron, Kawhi, Giannis, KD, and Steph are all top 5. I put Davis right behind Luka. Yeah, that's fair, and I think that's a pretty solid top 5 there in that regard as well. Again, if LeBron's full health, and I know he said recently like, I might never be full health again in my career. Like, all right, if he's full health, like we saw even just last year in the playoffs, then yeah, he's unquestionably one of the best. KD looks like he's largely still there. I don't know if he's the height of his powers KD, but he's certainly a very good KD still. And maybe that is enough to knock him out of the top 5 discussion. Maybe he's in that 7 to 8 range. I don't know. Like I said, you can start splitting hairs and it just comes down to subjective opinion at that point. Alberto, I'm giving a like and I'm going to watch it later. Enjoy, my friends. Easy win tonight in Toronto. Well, don't jinx us with the easy win, but I appreciate the like and the support, Alberto. Let's see. Richard R. says, my offseason would be bringing back Tim Hardaway, sign Rashawn Holmes. That's another one of those very, very good moves I would like to see. You give me Rashawn Holmes and DeRozan? Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. And again, underrated moves. DeRozan has name value that'll get people to say, like, oh, well, that's a pretty nice move. But Rashawn Holmes still is flying under so many radars. But that would be a very, very good thing. Like, you give me those two, and to me, that two-pronged thing is better than if you were to pry away like a John Collins, which would be a much less likely scenario anyway. So that's where I would put my my support and my real efforts if I was Dallas. Holmes will be looking for a starting position, though. Not the end of the world at all. At all. Roster came from a lot of trades. That it did. Holmes can go on the floor first, but I don't want him getting much more than 20 minutes. See how he develops and fits here in Dallas, if we even get to that point. But I think Holmes would be a perfect addition. And that's another shout out as well to Eni Nduka. You guys obviously familiar with Eni. He was on that train a year ago, more. I mean, he's been on the Rashawn Holmes train to Dallas a long time now. And that's one that I think is a very viable move going forward and has really caught on for a lot of people. Thinking like that would be a very savvy move. Dallas Draft has also been pushing for Cody Zeller, and I agree with him on that. Oh, Mavs Draft. I said Dallas Draft. Sorry. Yeah, Cody Zeller. It's not a bad move at all, actually, now that I think about it. Draft analysis stuff isn't a lot of what I do. I deal more with the active roster as opposed to the college basketball prospects. But there's a whole thing to that. Something on the... Oh, okay, it was the background. I saw something blip, and I was like, what was that? But it was the animated background behind me. KP should get traded if he gets injured in the playoffs. I mean, if you want a bag of peanuts, minus maybe the bag. I agree with the sentiment. Not the sentiment that he should be traded. I agree with the frustration, the emotion behind the sentiment. But, yeah, you just got to see what this roster is able to do. Let's see. I got time for a couple more quick questions. If you guys want, hit a question in there, hit a tag. Also, consider liking this video. Leave a subscribe. Consider becoming a member. I'm going to be rolling out more of these videos, more of these live streams, get back into my flow of doing this regularly. I know I've talked about that before and it hasn't really caught on. You have my word that we will be doing these more often. No fewer than 3 streams a week for the foreseeable future. And I'll also be giving videos and doing stuff like that regarding the entire postseason run. I'll be running those out. If not that night, then certainly first thing in the morning. So there's a lot of content to look forward to. So you can always help the channel grow by supporting it in that way. There's Patreon, there's memberships. Simple, like the video, subscribe, share the video, whatever. Easy ways. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Fazar, what's good? Not much, man, not much. That is a question, but I'm not going to count it as one of the 3 final questions I got time for. Let's see. Brunson, Hardaway, or Powell improve much right now? Are you asking if they have improved much or if their addition where they weren't? I guess I need you, Marcos, to clarify what your question is a little bit there. They have been playing well. Brunson's been a little bit up and down, but Hardaway and Powell have both been playing very well lately, and Powell wasn't in the playoffs last year, nor was Brunson, so I'm trying to figure out exactly what your question was. What about Evan Fournier over DeMar? He has not been good for Boston, and I know part of that, he said, was because of COVID, how he came back from that physically, but he has not been... I mean, he's a guy that I said I wanted... at the deadline, like a move that I would have been happy with. But I think with how it's shaped up, I wouldn't hate the move, but I would be cautious about the move. More cautious than I would about DeRozan. Would I want DeRozan even if it means letting Hardaway go? Yes, I think I would, because he's going to be playing that position anyway, and I think it's an upgrade. I think it's a much more consistent player. I think it's a better defender. And I think he's got such a clutch factor about him that it's a quality addition. You know, look back not too long ago, the Spurs, his game winner for the Spurs against Dallas there, where Dallas for some reason just declines to send the trap at the end. Luka's just kind of standing in no man's land, and DeRozan gets an easy pull-up jumper, which is literally where he's been the most lethal in the league this year in those sort of scenarios, operating off pull-up jumpers in the mid-range. And I think it's points per possession. We're like if not among, then the actual top of the NBA in that regard. And Dallas basically let him get the exact shot that he wanted. But that's so valuable of a shot that we need in our offense. Luka's mid-range game has improved a great deal this year. But if you can get another guy like that can create his own shot and can do that sort of thing with DeRozan, and it comes in a more consistent package than Hardaway, and there's always the chance that you can actually, I don't know that you get him for less per year, but I feel like you might, and maybe I'm crazy here, I feel like you might have the chance to get him at obviously less than like a 5-year deal or something like that. I think you can get him like a 3 or a 4-year deal in that regard, which gives you a little bit more flexibility, big picture. But we'll see. So yes, I would be willing to do that, despite recognizing that Hardaway has been very hot for the Mavericks in the past couple weeks, for sure. Who do you think more the third star after KP and Luka becomes the first and second star? Okay, so who do I think becomes, of those three, this is Marco's question, clarified a little bit. Who do I consider like the third star on the team after Luka and KP? Hardaway fills that role best right now, and it's the consistency, it's the scoring. Brunson's capable of stepping into that role on a given night, but Hardaway, especially when he's on, you see it. He'll give you 27, 30 points, whatever. He can just light it up when he's on. The problem is, can he be consistent? Because when he's not consistent, then it's not there. But when you have games like the other night where he ends with 27, yeah, he was only 3 of 10 on threes. Not great. 30%, not great by any means. But he made 7 other baskets that were either attacking the basket, transition alley-oop dunks, or pull-up jumpers. I like when he's not solely living and dying by the 3, when he's able to be complete and well-rounded in his game. It makes such a big difference for what this offense is able to attack with. And in that respect, yes, I would say he is still the number 3 option. Talking about KP, 7'3" and has a 10 plus lower body injuries. Talking about, the KP health issues. Yeah. Am I happy with Josh Green given less minutes than Rick right now? I want him to get more minutes. He brings a great scrappiness and energy to him, and his confidence seems to be growing lately. And so I think he should get more minutes in these next couple of games, especially given the opponents. He should get more minutes in that regard, and that'll give him a chance to keep growing. Now, will he see a lot of burn in playoffs? Probably not. It'll probably be very spot duty, if at all. But I think Josh Green adds a lot to this team right now and is absolutely something that we should be leaning on more in this next run here. Well, guys, I think that's going to do it for my time. I got a meeting at 2, actually, so I'm getting pretty right up against it. But I appreciate everyone who's here. You guys are awesome. Drop a like, leave a comment below, subscribe to the Dallas Prospect. And until next time, remember, every legend was once a prospect. Peace. Back tomorrow. Wait, not tomorrow.
This is the Dallas Prospect Live with DD.
Tomorrow, Saturday? Maybe. Back soon.
The Dallas Prospect
Probably tomorrow.
Funded by viewers like you through Patreon and PayPal. To support the show, visit patreon.com/the Dallas Prospect or become a member by clicking the join button. Now let the show begin.